Hey guys, welcome to HRG Zone YouTube channel. And today I am gonna show you the top 10 best 4GB RAM and 1GB VRam PC games 2024. So sit back and relax. Starting off number 10. Hitman: Absolution is a stealth game in which the player assumes the role of a hitman named Agent 47. Presented from a third-person perspective, the gameplay centers around completing set objectives within a series of levels. Objectives can range from simply reaching the end of the level, to eliminating specific individuals. The players choose how to complete each level, taking branching paths to get to a target or location. Players may use pistols, bottles or bricks, assault rifles, shotguns, fiber wire, or steel pipe against enemies if opting for the action-oriented approach, or avoid enemies altogether, not being seen, using disguises, blending into the environment, and only attacking the set targets, if using the stealth-oriented approach. Agent 47 also has the instinct ability that lets the player monitor enemies more easily. Number 9 is Need for Speed: Most Wanted is set in an open-world environment. The game takes on the gameplay style of the first Most Wanted title in the Need for Speed franchise. The contrast difference is the 2012 Most Wanted does not contain a story. Most Wanted allows players to select one car and compete against other racers in 3 types of events: sprint races, which involves traveling from one point of the city to another, circuit races, each having 2 or 3 laps total, and speed runs, which involve traversing through a course in the highest average speed possible. There are also ambush races, where the player starts surrounded by cops and must evade their pursuit as quickly as possible. Number 8 is Outlast. The player assumes the role of investigative journalist Miles Upshur, as he navigates a dilapidated psychiatric hospital in Leadville, Colorado that is overrun by homicidal patients. The game is played from a first-person perspective and features some stealth gameplay mechanics. The player can walk, run, crouch, jump, climb ladders and vault over objects. Unlike most games, however, the player does not have a visible health bar on the screen and is unable to attack enemies. The player must instead rely on stealth tactics such as hiding in lockers, sneaking past enemies, staying in the shadows, and hiding behind or under things to survive. Alternatively, the player can attempt to outrun their pursuer. If the player dies, the game will reset to the most recent checkpoint. Number 7 is Call of Duty Black Ops 2 video game to feature branching storylines, in which the player's choice affects both the current mission and in turn, the overall course of the story. Known as Strike Force missions, these branching storylines appear during the 2025 storyline and feature permanent death. The success or failure of these missions can have ramifications for the wider campaign storyline. Choosing one of the missions locks out the others unless the player begins a fresh campaign. Strike Force missions allow the player to control a number of different war assets, such as unmanned aerial vehicles, jet fighters, and robots. If the player dies in a Strike Force mission, the campaign continues recording that loss, as opposed to letting the player load a previously saved checkpoint. The player's progress in the Strike Force missions may go on to change even the plans of the story's antagonist, Raul Menendez. Number 6 is Prototype 2 is an action-adventure game played from a third-person perspective and set in an open world based on modern-day Manhattan. Like Alex Mercer in the first game, the player character, James Heller, can shape-shift and assume other people's identities and memories by consuming them, although in the sequel this has become more tactical. Due to Blackwatch's actions in the Yellow Zone, if the player assumes the role of a soldier, people will react to him in a way that shows that they want nothing to do with him. To make sure that enemies do not overwhelm the player, a dodging system and new, more realistic AI were introduced. Heller is able to use weapons in the game, such as ripping the Gatling cannon off a tank and using it against enemies. Number 5 is Tomb Raider is presented in third-person perspective. Players take control of the series' lead character Lara Croft. The game uses an interconnected hub-and-spoke model that combines action-adventure, exploration, and survival elements. Players can traverse between the camps and across the island using footpaths, improvised or already available ziplines and climbable tracks. Many of Lara's moves are carried over from the previous games created by Crystal Dynamics, with some tweaks added, such as incorporating elements of stealth gameplay. Quick time events are scattered at regular intervals throughout the game, often appearing at crucial or fast-moving points in the game's plot, such as extracting a shard of metal and escaping a collapsing cave. Number 4 is Grand Theft Auto 4 is an action-adventure game played from a third-person perspective. Players complete missions, linear scenarios with set objectives, to progress through the story. It is possible to have several active missions running at one time, as some require players to wait for further instructions or events. Outside of missions, players can freely roam the game's open world and complete optional side missions. Composed of the fictional city of Liberty City, the world is larger in area than most earlier Grand Theft Auto series entries. At the beginning of the game, players can only explore the first island, composed of Dukes and Broker, with all other islands unlocking as the story progresses. Number 3 is Crysis 2 is a first-person shooter video game developed by Crytek, published by Electronic Arts. The player assumes the role of a Force Recon Marine called Alcatraz. Similar to its predecessor, it provides freedom to customize weaponry and abilities. Crytek wanted to avoid making another game set in a true jungle environment. New York City has been dubbed an urban jungle. The urban atmosphere offers new options with relation to progressing and planning attacks. Players are able to navigate between floors and buildings, as well as a destroyed cityscape. Number 2 is Resident Evil Revelations 2 is a survival horror game which supports cooperative gameplay. When played in single-player mode, the player must switch characters to solve puzzles and do certain actions. The game has stealth elements as only 2 of the 4 playable characters use guns. The other 2 are more vulnerable, preferring to use melee weapons such as crowbars and bricks. They can also find hidden items with a flashlight or special senses. Claire Redfield is the main protagonist and Barry Burton's daughter, Moira, plays a supporting role. Barry is another playable protagonist and he is joined by Natalia Corda, a little girl with supernatural abilities. And number 1 is Spec Ops: The Line. The player can select from 4 difficulty levels: Walk on the Beach, Combat Op, Suicide Mission, and the hardest difficulty, Fubar, which is only unlocked after completing the game on Suicide Mission. Various new weapons and equipment become available as the game progresses, some dropped by downed enemies. These include several different rifles, handguns, and machine guns. Some offer alternate firing modes, like attaching a suppressor or using a telescopic sight. Players can also acquire and make use of grenade launchers, hand grenades, and rocket launchers. However, the player can only carry 2 weapons at a time. Supply caches can be found in different parts of the game, allowing the player to refill their ammo and grenades. So that's all, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, so please like this video and subscribe my channel and don't forget to notifications. So thanks again and see you soon on next video. And good, bye.